To continue from the other day, I posted a video called Dark Souls is Absurd, which was about how Dark Souls is very steeped in absurdist philosophy. And I would just like to set it on the record that Dark Souls is their Gurren Lagann of video games. Now, that sort of a thing there seems pretty dubious, right? Like Gurren Lagann is a high energy, high action thing with a point. See Best Guy Ever's whole thing on that. It's brilliant, and it'll, if you haven't thought about it much, it'll revolutionize the way you've ever thought about Gurren Lagann. And if you thought about Gurren Lagann, then it'll it'll help confirm a lot of the things that you thought that you've were thinking about, and it'll expand it further beyond what you ever could have imagined, which is a lot like Gurren Lagann itself, and he does a lot with that. Anyways, this isn't a review about that. This is just talking about Dark Souls and how it's not influenced by Gurren Lagann, but it shares a home. It shares a lot of the same sort of aspects. So that is to say that. It's more to say that Gurren Lagann is also steeped in kind of, not quite, but sort of, in an absurdist philosophy, whether that be intentional or not, or unintentional, I don't know. We know that Gurren Lagann, there's spiral power, and the fate of the universe is sealed by this spiral power. And in this case, as a kind of review, absurdist thought says that there is no point to the universe, the humanity cannot grasp the point of the universe, and will never be able to grasp the point of existence. But, as another footnote, the pronunciation of the philosopher who basically is credited with absurdism is Camus, because it's French, the U.S. is, the S is silent. So yeah, it's actually Camus, instead of Camus, but I think Camus sounds better. In Gintapa Gurren Lagann, you have the anti-spirals. And the anti-spirals basically are in line with the suicide line of thought, like a suicide solution. What a phrase. But the suicide solution of absurdism. As, they have basically given up on there being a point. They've given up on fighting against the absurd. The absurd in this case is the concept of spiral energy. They've decided not to try to mediate that, not try to, what's the word? Control spiral energy. They've decided that spiral energy will cause the end of the universe. And so, they believe the universe has a point, still. That is in contradiction to, the whole, shtick of being, the whole shtick of the suicide whole point. But, they fit the same sort of bill. They come into conflict with the rest of the universe because they have stopped all progress. So they are they themselves become like spiral energy. They're there is no real point to the universe in that that is reinforced by them existing, because they all of the spiral races are kept under lock and key, and they themselves don't really have much of emotion left because that's part of spiral energy, is the whole emotion and stuff. So they are the subscribers of the suicide shit. There's really I guess in this case the whole believer thing is then contrasted with it's kind of strange because Rashu and his mentor, whose name escapes me right now, they obviously don't really believe in the things they're putting out. They want to try to secure a future for humanity, but in the end, that sort of control, it'll inevitably lead to the anti-spirals. So in this case, belief kind of leads to suicide, which, you can basically kind of draw that line, in terms of you can kind of read between the lines and say that that is factually correct in terms of how the world actually works, where asserting to believe in these divine powers is a sort of intellectual suicide rather than a physical suicide, and thus also contributes to the absurd, as Camus asserts. And then we have the rejection of the absurd. Now I'm thinking about it, the belief aspect is probably more in line with Simone and well, not really Simone, because he figures all that shit out. But Kamina, he completely believed in his ideals, and that kind of, we know, will lead to the universe's destruction. Like that kind of blinding belief in your own ideals without kind of looking at the evidence, without kind of taking reality into consideration. And then we have Simone, who kind of realizes that hardcore belief in his ideals isn't going to fix the universe's core issue. He knows that Rashu has a point to his solution. He knows the anti-spirals have a point to their solution, but he knows that this is too barbaric. There is no point to the universe if it's not going to be observed. Basically, is his conclusion by the end of the show. It's why he fights the anti-spirals, because people should be able to explore the universe freely. Communist philosophy doesn't lead to that permanent solution. It kind of mixed between the two ideals, which, again, watch Best Guy Ever's video, Best Anime Ever, Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. It is really good for this. It certainly helped inspire this kind of line of thought, comparing Dark Souls to Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. And this is just purely on a thematical level. But also, just in terms of kind of how the game progresses. You start off as you start in a very similar situation, kind of thematically, as the beginning of Gurren Lagann. How you don't know anything about this world and you're trapped in this prison. You eventually ascend to kill the gods of this world, and in that same light, by the end of Gurren Lagann, Simone and his crew are fighting on a universal scale, where they're using galaxies as weapons, and implicitly billions are dying in the aftermath, if you think about it. But it has that same sort of scale up, where you begin as a weak, fragile thing, and Simone begins as weak and he's relying on different people, and eventually it builds up to this grand, high stakes, high energy thing where you're killing off powerful entities. And yeah, I think it's just interesting to note this this is kind of a Toppa Gurren Lagann is absurd sort of thing. But I don't need to do a whole video on this. Best Guy Ever already pointed out all of the deep details of why this is. I'm just connecting it to a philosophy that he didn't connect it to, essentially, by way of Dark Souls. I'm using Dark Souls to explain why Gurren Lagann is also kind of absurdist in its philosophy, I guess. So yeah, that's it for this one. Just to be clear, when I say make a video, I mean as a high concept sort of Dark Souls is absurd sort of deal where, have a lot of things planned. This is just a kind of stream of consciousness sort of deal where I had this idea, much like how Nate went off on kind of Angel's Egg in the beginning with me and Matha. I expect more of these as the weeks go on. So yeah, remember to like the video if you thought this was interesting. Leave a comment if you want to talk to me, because I'll respond if it's interesting enough. And you can hit me up on Discord. I'll be more direct in my responses and stuff, more active even. I probably don't deserve any money on my Patreon yet, but it'd be cool if you went ahead and did that. And subscribe, dude. If you really like this shit, I'm planning all month. TTGPOYEDFTMOJ. TTGPOYEDFTMOJ. I'll get it down permanently one of these days. Okay, bye.